all works?
Yeah,
All right, let's do
definitely.
it. All right. All right, let's get started here. So today we're going to be talking about buyer offers. For those of you taking this class before, really looking forward to hearing your questions. Those who've used the purchase agreement before, looking forward to hearing your questions. The form has been updated a little bit since the last time we did this class. There are 1 or 2, maybe 3 new additions to it that we'll address as we go through, and they're great changes. I think they're really, really valuable. I think they make a big difference on how we use the form. So we'll just get started here with the top. So at the very beginning here, the first section is called the final agency acknowledgement. And in this section, we're outlining who the agents are and who they're representing. So if you're the buyer's agent, you're going to put your name at line 2. If there were 2 buyer's agents, you could do 2 and 3. So like if you were on a team or something, you might put your name on line 2, or you might put your team's name on line 2 and your name on line 3. And then you're going to add your license number. This information is available in the RMLS. So if you go to the RMLS roster, you can find this information. So you can know how to use the RMLS roster. It's really important. You're able to locate other agents, but you'll find your license number and then put your our office name here, which is Keller Williams Realty, Portland Premier. Put that all right there. And then our office license number, which is also available on the same little screen on RMLS that has your information on it. So find that, put our office address. And there again, it says our office, our license number. I always put my phone number first, and then I put the office number second. You probably don't need to put the office number, but I think it's nice to have there. If it was ever to be audited by the real estate agency, if they ever took a look at this document, I think I'd want to have the office phone number on that just to show that I'm trying to I'm trying to comply. I mean, it's unlikely anybody's going to call the office trying to get a hold of you, but might call trying to get a hold of me. So, but always put your cell phone number, office number, your email address, and then typically you're going to be working with the buyer exclusively. Okay. In the second part here, we put the seller's agent information. This stuff is this information is available in the RMLS as well. If you go to the listing and click on the agent name, all this information will pop up.
I'm actually going to go pull that too at the same time.
Go for it.
RMLS, so that we can actually have one here.
Yeah.
Just trying to remember her number. No.
It worked.
Woo!
Okay, could you go to the roster first? The top, at the very top. You can use that one too.
I just saw
You can use
that. That's
one?
new.
Yeah, that's new.
That wasn't there.
So
I
you-
go here instead.
Right, and go agent, and you can find your own information here if you'd like, and see you got it all right here. So
Here's the office.
there's the
license
office license number. There's your license number.
and our phone number,
Yep.
right?
Yep, our phone number.
Okay, so let's go get a listing.
Mhm.
Well, here, I'll just grab one that's in a search. How about that?
Yeah.
In one of my profiles, because that's faster to find a listing.
Sure.
Right. Come on. Of course, it takes 3 hours to get them. All right, here, oh, it's pending. Here's an active.
All right. So if we click on Kimberly Seckman's name here, you'll see the same window that we saw on the.
Fast, easy way to get
Yeah.
all of the information you
Yeah.
need.
Brian, can you see, or would you rather us share the screen?
Oh, we're not sharing screen?
Let's share the screen.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Screen 2. Okay, now can you see it?
Much clearer.
Nice.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So did you everybody online track that to know how to use the roster and how to pull up the selling agent information?
You can, in a listing, you can go here. When you're looking for your own, if you don't know, click on roster, look for your own name by agent, and you'll get the same thing like this. Cool?
Cool.
Do you want it
Let's
back?
go back to this. Okay, so you're filling in this information again, probably going to represent the seller exclusively. This area right here talks about delivery of the the Oregon agency pamphlet, which describes the agency relationships, the seller's agent, buyer's agent, dual agent. So we have that all spelled out right here.
Here's an important question, Kelly. If I have an offer I write for my buyer, so I'll have them do that agency, the pamphlet and the agency form and have them sign that. And if we don't get this offer accepted, the next offer I write, do I have to have them sign that again?
Yeah, it needs to be presented every time they write an offer.
So they have to re-sign that?
Re-sign it every single time.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I do it every single time. I send, and it's the first thing I do. It's like, so when I'm ordering my documents for delivery, I send the pamphlet first,
Yep.
then the agency disclosure for the appropriate party,
Yep.
and then I send this, and I do it every single time.
Right, because then it's in order, right? They're reading what the relationship is, and then they get to read the document.
Right, so if I were to ever be pulled in front of the agency, the real estate agency, and they asked me if I delivered it, I would be like, yes, I delivered it. And I made sure that it came in the specific order. So before they even signed the offer, they acknowledged the disclosures, the agency disclosures. Okay, so now we're gonna identify the principles to the transaction. So the buyer's name is gonna go in here. Well, it's gonna go here, they're gonna sign there. And then the seller's name is gonna go here, they're gonna sign over there eventually. I never use the auto populate function for this because sometimes the information doesn't come in correctly. It gets buyer's name, the seller's name might get flip-flopped. It always comes in capitals, and I never use capitals in this. I always use proper English, and I try to use proper grammar. And so I would never capitalize somebody's name. I would always, write it out correctly. And I want to do it, and I want to handwrite it in here because I don't, right
You want to
here.
type it.
I want to type it right here because I don't want it to, thank you. I want to type it right there because I don't want to be in capitals. I don't want to be last name first, first name last. I want to be in the correct order. So I never, ever use auto-populate.
You just told how long you've been in the business if you're handwriting it.
I barely did that. Barely did I do that.
Yeah.
And it's finally got a document that would be executable because it could be written because my handwriting is so bad. Okay. So some of this information is going to auto-populate. So price, property, description, you put the buyer's name in there, it's going to auto-populate down here. Same with the seller. We get down here, we're going to put the county that the property is located in. We're going to put the street address in here. If you click on that, it's going to pull up a window, street address, city, state, zip code. And then down below here, you've got a series of options of little windows to add things. I always do the tax ID number. If you're like sometimes in rural properties or even something in the city, you could be buying two tax lots in one sale. And so you want to make sure all the tax lots or all the tax ID numbers are there. You want to be able to identify each and every single property that your client's purchasing as part of this offer. Okay. Right here, this is the purchase price. So the full purchase amount right there. So if it's a $500,000 house, the client's going to pay $500,000. $500,000 goes there. The earnest money amount should be probably at least 1% of the purchase price. It can be whatever your clients want it to be, but you want it to be taken seriously. And I think it should be at least 1%. Some agents prefer 3% on the listing side, like the Clark team, they look for 3% there. I usually do 2 is what I suggest to my clients, but it depends on something that's a really competitive, if it's a really competitive property, I know we're going to be going up against other offers, you may want to do 3% there. And we're going to protect our clients' earnest money as buyer's agents. So it shouldn't matter how much we put here because we're going to get it back no matter what. Okay. Line C would be if there is additional earnest money, which is super unusual.
When would we have that?
Let's say you have a complicated disclosure, like a complicated, you're gonna have a big inspection period. Like you're maybe not just inspecting the property, you're inspecting a bunch of different stuff, or you're buying the property to divide it as part of an investment or something like that. It could just be a standard sale too.
Okay.
But the point would be, you're going to, at a later point, you're going to clear some sort of hurdle in the transaction probably, and then you'd be putting more earnest money down. This isn't used very often. I've seen it used a little bit more because the market's been competitive, where somebody might put $10,000 earnest money down, and then upon removal of all the inspections, they might put additional earnest money down. Removal of contingencies, they might put additional earnest money down. But it's not very often. So typically I leave this blank.
Yep.
but you could use it for that. So at closing or before closing, at or before closing, the balance of the down payment is right here. So the down payment is going to be the earnest money. And so if they're putting 20% down on $500,000, that's $100,000 down. So that's 5,000. This line would be 95,000 for the total amount of $100,000. Okay, so this, and this adds up to the total down payment. That people get confused on that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it auto populates down here what the balance of the purchase price will be. They'll be given on delivery of a deed. We'll check that box. We rarely ever sell on contract. So a deed would mean that the lender, the buyer is either paying cash or they're getting a loan from a private institution or a lender, a bank. Contract would mean the seller is going to actually be the one providing the loan to the buyer. And it's super unusual that we do that, like really, really unusual. So almost always in your career, you're gonna check this box right here. And then this would be the loan amount or the remainder of the purchase price is to be paid in cash. Okay,
Did we talk about the sheet that we created?
I have not created it, I have not talked about it.
So the sheet that you have, and that's on Slack, Brian, you have one already, right? Your buyer wants to write an offer. And it's in the Slack channel if you want to download that. It's just kind of a cheat sheet for you when you're talking to your buyer. They say, okay, let's write an offer. A lot of times you'll just be like, okay, how much do you want to write it for and when do you want to close? And then as you're going in to write your offer, you're realizing all these other questions that you need answers from them. So if you just go, okay, I have some questions I need to get from you before we write the offer. These are the majority of the questions that you need. I think these are all the questions you need in order to write this. And it's almost in order of where the placement goes in the contract. So that's a great cheat sheet until you get like used to it and it becomes habit of knowing exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Ready?
Keep going. So we talked about fixtures here. So fixture would be, I'm trying to look around the room and find a fixture.
The projector?
The projector is a fixture.
Is
The
it
heating duct is a fixture. These pipes are fixtures essentially. So they're things that are attached to the property that are going to be sold along with the property. So they're considered real property because they're attached to the property itself. And so like this building here is attached to the ground, right? And all these other things are attached to the building, which is attached to the ground. So they would stay in the sale of this house, of this building. And so if there's any exceptions to that, like let's say these light fixtures where the seller wants to keep the light fixtures and your clients don't want the light fixtures. So we're going to exclude the light fixtures in the training room. And that would mean that upon closing, these light fixtures would not be there.
And you're going to write that out.
And you'd be very specific about what that is.
Like specifically, right?
So we have light fixtures, location.
Yeah.
Personal property, these are things that are going to be part of the sale that wouldn't have been part of the sale anyway. It's like a refrigerator, a
Should we
washer
go
and
look at this
dryer.
one?
What's that?
So I said, should we go look at this one?
Sure.
See what it says on what they're,
And so in this one, built-in microwave, built-in range, built-in dishwasher, bar, hardwood floors. They're not, kitchen. So they're not really including freestanding range. It's just funny, it says freestanding range.
and freestanding
And built-in.
refrigerator now.
Yeah.
They changed it.
So those are the things that they're showing are features of the house. They're not saying they're going to stay. They just say they're features. If they're not in the offer, they may not stay. So if it's like a freestanding range, you should put that in. You should put that in the offer. Always put a freestanding range. If you're in the kitchen and it's not built in, freestanding range should always be in it.
Maybe even a wine fridge.
Wine fridge, you would
Because it could
definitely.
just be a slide in.
Yeah, most wine fridges are just slide-ins. They're not built in. All of them. I don't
Yeah.
think I don't know.
I don't know if any can be built.
And so you're gonna want to, if that's something your clients want, you have to identify it, make sure you put it in here. Otherwise, they're gonna show up at closing, the day of closing,
And
day of
it's
possession,
gone.
and it's not gonna be there to be mad at you.
I guess
So,
who's gonna buy
you guys.
one?
So
Because you want a happy client, right?
always have the personal property there so you don't have any ambiguity. Okay, now we're in the financial section of the purchase agreement. So we're gonna talk about how the buyer is going to purchase the property. the balance of the purchase price here, the buyer represents the buyer has liquid and available funds for earnest money deposits and down payments, and if all cash transaction, the full purchase price sufficient to close the transaction, subject herein and not relying upon any contingent source of funds. What would a contingent source of funds be? Anyone?
It's right there.
Yeah, they are described in there. Like anything that you don't, anything that's not in a savings account,
What about
anything that's not in a
stocks?
checking account, what?
I'm gonna cash out some stocks or my Bitcoin.
That's contingent funds, right? Because those funds are subject to change in value. So you would definitely want to disclose like an investment account or 401k, or the big one is gift funds typically.
Yeah.
Gift funds, that's a really common one.
Mom and dad's
So
giving
mom and
us
dad are-
20,000 for a down payment.
Right. But mom and dad got mad now that I'm supplying it. You didn't disclose it. They can't close and earnest money's gone. Right? So you think about that. If it's an all cash transaction, you'll be checking the boxes here. You'll want to provide proof of funds. I'm big on having proof of funds and pre-approval letters available to present with my offer. I think it makes it look like you're prepared. Your clients have been thinking about buying, and this isn't just some sort of whim. So I want to have that stuff ready at my fingertips to deliver along with my offer.
Right, because if you don't have that
Yeah.
and you're gonna wait 5 days to get it, will they accept your offer? Like,
Mhm.
they could accept your offer and guess what? They actually don't have the funds and now the offer, they missed 5 days of other offers,
Mhm.
right? So most of the time, in this market, they wouldn't even accept it.
Yeah, they wouldn't even accept it. Now, if it's a cash offer and the proof of funds is supplied later, I see that happening more often. But here's the problem. When you're representing a buyer with that, there's this condition down here. So you're disclosing here how you're going to provide those proof of funds. But down here, it says seller may notify buyer in writing of seller's unconditional disapproval of the verification within blank business days. If it's two, if not filled in. They call it disapproval period. Following its receipt by seller, provided, however, such disapproval must be objectively reasonable. So if the seller doesn't like the proof of funds, and the proof of funds aren't objectively reasonable, they can the seller can back out. It's the only term in this whole agreement that allows the seller to back out is this one right here. Now, what's objectively reasonable?
It could be different for me and you.
I have no
right?
idea. I wouldn't want to find out. I don't want to find out what objectively reasonable means. Okay. So, because if you find out, that means your buyer lost out on a house or you have a seller. And the reason why that could be difficult is how that could be used is what if the seller accepted your buyer's offer and then an hour later a better offer came in.
Yeah.
You're like, all of a sudden those proof of funds aren't objectively reasonable, right?
Yeah.
So if you haven't already submitted them, then
That makes it even easier.
make it even easier. Now, if you submitted them with the offer and they accepted it, they could make no argument that they weren't objectively reasonable, right? Because they had them right there, they looked at them, it's objectively reasonable. But if you were to do it at a later date, if you're supposed to send it in later,
No, this says 2 business days following receipt.
they must, right. But still, I think they'd have a really hard time arguing in front of an arbitrator that they
Especially
weren't.
if it's like in a bank.
Right, well, just if it was submitted along with the offer and accepted the
Yeah.
offer, you'd be like,
Yeah.
what, those, you didn't think they were objectively reasonable? Like, I don't think that flies. But if you were to do it after the fact, then you sent them over 2 business days, you send them over, let's say you said right here, buyer will provide seller with the verification of funds within 5 business days, right? Right? And then on that 5th business day, you send over the what you think is an objectively reasonable proof of funds. In the meantime, the seller got a better offer and they're like, these aren't objectively reasonable anymore. Now you're gonna find yourself in a problem. And then you could actually say, well, there could be an argument made that they weren't objectively reasonable because they didn't have them at the time that they accept the offer. But if you have them at the time they accept the offer, I think you'd have a really, really hard time as a seller
Mhm.
claiming that they weren't reasonable. So,
Yeah.
all right, spent too much time on that, but my point is get your stuff together.
Oh, but it's important to spend time on the couple things that are really important, right?
Yeah. Well,
Well,
again,
that's a good
it's all,
question
Yeah.
on the proof of funds, because mine that came through on my listing was just a screenshot from somebody's cell phone.
Yeah.
So I mean, how that you said it's subjective. So I mean, you just
it's
kind
not
of
subjective, it's objective.
It's objective.
Yep.
objective.
Yeah. So in my mind, I mean, I think that's reasonable. Like,
If you can see that it has their name on it and that the funds are there,
it's a bank.
it's a picture, you can print it.
Yeah. So you gotta remember the penalty for the buyer presenting that and having it be not accurate, it's fraud.
That's what I was
Right.
wondering. Okay.
Yeah, it's fraud. So there's a huge penalty for goofing around with that. So, but again, yeah, I don't know, would a screenshot of a phone be objectively reasonable? I don't wanna know. I wanna find out.
They're hurrying up to get it over to you so you can accept it.
Yeah. Perhaps the smart move then is if you're writing this offer and your clients, and you already have the proof of funds available to show them, can you go back down?
It's
Go
right,
back up.
oh, yeah, right here.
You put a zero in right there. You make that a zero.
Oh, make this a zero
You
here.
make that a zero. So if you already have the proof of funds to submit with the offer, then make that a zero.
There you
That way they
go.
can't say anything. Right?
You've got it. It's been delivered.
Right. But if this is a couple business days and that's zero, I think you probably have a voidable contract because that's not in the spirit of the agreement.
Right.
Okay, so here we're coming to a recent change here. This is good for everybody to listen to. So in section 4B here, they've added, so what we're doing is we're choosing the loan type here. So it's conventional, FHA, federal VA, and then this deals with closing costs. I think it's always shall, should always click shall here. And there's a few, in a VA loan, there's a few closing costs that the seller must pay for. And so in order for the loan closing, you need to check that box. I don't know why they have that second option. I don't like it. But the new part of the agreement here is if you check FHA or VA, now OREF 097 FHA federal VA mandatory clause is going to be attached, must be attached to the agreement, okay? And if it's not attached and the offer is accepted, then you may not have a meeting of the minds because there's information on that that's really paramount to the sale of the property. In it, it says, similar to what section 5.1 says down here, but that if the property does not appraise for the purchase price, or it doesn't qualify for the loan, the buyer doesn't have to move forward and they get their earnest money back. So the reason why they've added that is because there's been so many appraisal addendums where the appraisal is not part of the sale anymore.
Right.
And with an FHA and VA sale, that conflicts.
Yeah.
Right, because it's the FHA loan won't close without this addendum being signed or something similar to it being signed. So that would nullify any kind of appraisal addendum, any alteration to the current appraisal contingency as it was. So this is a great form. It should be attached to every VA and FHA offer you write. And I bet you'll start writing more of those in the future.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yep. Much like the proof of funds, we have pre-approval letter here. I would love it if this is always checked. That means the client has it right now, that it's delivered with the offer.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Always hope that one's checked. Again, I think it's been a competitive market for the last, I don't know,
Oh my God.
8 years. I mean, 8 years. It's really
Yeah.
been a seller's market for 8 years.
Yeah.
So I think that you always want to have that available.
Right,
Fine.
plus if you're out showing clients homes and you don't even have a pre-approval, and you don't even know if they could buy a home,
Yeah.
right? So
Now, if this is an op city person you just met,
we're gonna do it right away,
you're gonna show them the house first,
create a relationship.
create a relationship, but then you're gonna start pushing for that pre-approval letter. So they're able to provide it with I use the word marketable offer. They want to have a marketable offer. A marketable offer has a pre-approval letter or it has proof of funds.
Plus, once you start showing a buyer a house, so they say, well, we can afford 500,000, no pre-approval yet. You go show them a $500,000 house,
Mhm.
they go get pre-approved and they can only buy a $400,000 house. Huge difference in what they can buy.
Mhm.
So hard for a buyer to go backwards in what they want
Yeah.
than it is to go forward. Fantastic if they say we can afford a 500,000, they go get pre-approved, and the payment for them, actually, they could go 550. Huge difference for them,
Yeah, totally.
right? That's the big importance of
Yep,
a pre-approval.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, 5.1, this is a really important part of the agreement. If buyer is financing any portion of the purchase price, then this transaction is subject to the following financial contingencies. 1, the buyer and property to qualify for the loan from the lender. So obviously the buyer has to qualify. What does it mean by the property has to qualify? What does that mean? Yeah, yes, and what's gonna happen, you're right, and so what's gonna happen is the appraiser's gonna come out, he's gonna give them an appraised value of the property, he's also gonna do, not really a home inspection, but he is gonna look at some key things in the property that, that is gonna be required, and with an FHA or VA loan, the list is a lot longer of things he has to look for, so if he finds something on that list that doesn't conform to the expectation of the lender, he's gonna make a note of it, and then that would trigger that property not qualifying. So like with a VA loan or.
It all comes down to health and safety, right?
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much health and safety, but if it's a VA or FHA loan, what they look in the crawl space and there's any water in the crawl space whatsoever, that would make it so the property does not qualify. Same with like cracked paint, like if there's a painted deck and there's cracked paint on the deck, that's gonna make it so it doesn't qualify. So things to look out for when you're showing property.
If you know your buyer is doing an offer, that's.
Yeah, if your
Right.
buyer's gonna be VA or FHA, you wanna pay attention to those things a little bit.
Railings on anything over 30 inches?
I think so, or it might even be 18.
Did they move it?
I don't know, it could be 18, yeah, but some.
So
weird
because
things like
it's,
that.
someone could fall off, right? And hurt themselves if there's no railing on it. The other one is the
distance.
spindles between the distance between the spindles, because they don't want a kid to stick their head in there and get caught and, get injured.
Or go through it.
Or go through it.
Or go through it. So
Yeah.
there's lots of little things like that. Okay, the second part of this is lender's appraisal shall not be less than the purchase price. And so what we've seen as this market really heated up in the last year is that agents are, and it's tapering off a little bit, but buyers are agreeing to bring in X amount to closing to narrow that gap. So if the property, if we're purchasing it for 500, but the appraiser only thinks it's worth 450, that's $50,000 that the buyer may have to bring into closing to get it done, or negotiation will be done to change the price to make it work for both parties. So, and we'll get into that section too, section next, but the appraisal is really important. So we have an appraisal addendum that we created that addresses this. If your clients have extra cash that they're going to bring to closing to make up that difference, to make that offer more marketable, we've created an addendum for that. And you could just, you could just say, see appraisal addendum here, or you could put it down later in the offer too. But you could even say, what the buyer agrees to, property shall appraise for, if your client's gonna bring in like $10,000 extra, right? Then it would say, the sales contingent upon the property appraising for no less than $490,000, right? Because we set the purchase price at $500,000, then we put 490. The problem with doing that is if you change the purchase price, you have to make sure you change that term. Like if you were to raise the purchase price to 510, but you didn't change that 490 number, then instead of bringing 10,000 in, now they got to bring in 20. So you have to make sure you keep track if you make adjustments to the purchase price along the way. But we have an appraisal addendum that is less specific. It deals with the amount that they're willing to bring into closing as opposed to the purchase price. And I prefer you use that.
Yeah.
Yep. So right here, we talk about the failure of contingencies, and Danielle knows this one really well. We actually had we had a lot of fun with this one last week. So Danielle did a fantastic job. So her property came in, she's representing a seller, and the property actually did not appraise for the purchase price. It appraised for $20,000 less than the purchase price. And so what she did is she got on the phone immediately and started calling people who had seen the property, and she procured 2 offers. And she did it within this 2 business day period. So let me read this to you. If buyer receives actual notification lender that any financial contingencies identified above have failed or otherwise cannot occur, buyer shall promptly notify seller, and all parties shall have 2 business days, if not filled in, following the date of buyer's notification to seller, to either A, terminate this transaction by signing the termination agreement and or such other form, reach a written mutual agreement upon such price and terms that will permit this transaction to continue. Neither seller nor buyer required under this preceding provision to reach such agreement. If A or B fail to occur within the time period identified in this section 5.2,
2 days.
this transaction shall be automatically terminated. Automatically terminate. This is the only automatic termination in the entire agreement right here. Okay. So what happened was the seller's agent, the buyer's agent, thought they were really cunning and they were playing hardball, and they said, we're not paying a dime more for that house than the $20,000 less. And they asked to extend this period here, which we didn't do, okay? And then we got 2 other offers, and we went back to the original offer and said, guess what? If you want the house, you're gonna have to pay this much more. They were like, what? But so the house appraised for less, you're actually making us pay more than we were gonna pay for the first place? We're like, yep. They're like, wow, okay. And the reason we were able to do that is because it automatically terminated. So we had a lot of leverage and we had other offers to go with. And so we were able to get the original offer, who had already cleared all their contingencies, already had their appraisal done, was much further down the road. Not only were we able to get them to raise their purchase price, we were able to get 15 more days occupancy and extend the closing date a little bit to fit our clients' desires better. So Danielle did a great job in getting the leverage and getting those 2 offers together to make us enforce this addendum. It was really, really good work. It was awesome. And we were against a very, very good agent. He was just like dumbfounded by the whole thing. So it helps to know your agreement, everybody.
Wait, we have a new person in here. Danielle, was it really helpful to have Kelly there to help you with figuring out what to do?
Yeah.
No, thank you. But having those 2, without those 2 offers, we had nothing. We had no leverage. We would have been weak. So just being Johnny on get on the phone.
Good job.
Getting those offers was the key to getting this thing done. Okay, so this is a big deal. Know this really well, know how to use it. 5.3 representations regarding. I'm not going to get into too much of this. You guys should all go
That's
through.
a whole nother class.
It is. You should read 5.3, and there's a lot of requirements in here. Kind of the biggest hits though is your client's agreeing to make a loan application probably within 3 business days of this offer being accepted. And it goes into a description about what that means. It means they need to give them their names, their income, their social security numbers, the property address, and that sort of thing. And then also the purchase agreement. So that's a big one. Also says in this section that they are going to get a loan with the lender that provided the pre-approval letter. If they change lenders, they have to get permission from the seller to do it. So if they don't get the permission, they change lenders or lender or the loan product. So if they go from conventional to FHA or something, if they do that without permission from the seller, they've breached the contract and their earnest money could be forfeited.
Yep.
So that's big. Those are the big things you need to know here. The other one is that in this section, they also agree to order the appraisal at the end of the inspection period, which is funny. It says, it actually doesn't say the end. It says expiration of the inspection period in section 10.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, I think you can end the inspection period 5 days into it or whatever, how many days into it. And if it says it goes 10 days long, if it says the expiration, if it's actually 5 days longer than that, I have to follow up the paperwork on it. So don't pay much attention. But always order the appraisal immediately following the end of the inspection period.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not gonna get into insurance or flood or flood zones very much. We're not gonna talk about seller carrier financing because we're not gonna use it very often. So this is where we'd add any additional financing provisions, like if your clients are going to be asking for the seller to pay some of their closing costs, you would put it there. If you're going to use that appraisal addendum, that's a good place to put it as well. We'd need to mention it right here. Title insurance, so your clients can be provided a preliminary title report within 5 business days or whatever number you put in here of acceptance of this offer. And your buyer should review that title report in concert. And if they have any questions, they should ask the escrow officer, but they should do it before the expiration of this contingency right here, which is 5 days following, if not filled in, of receipt of that document. And we did a class on the preliminary title report. We should probably do another one.
Yeah, I'm gonna circle back around again. So we're gonna start with the trio, and then we'll do a prelim, and then we'll do a settlement statement again.
That's great. But it's important to review that. Things that come up in there would be easements, CCRs, HOA.
Yeah, map, right?
Mhm.
Because you want to look at the map to see where the
One of the big things you want to make sure is that you kind of want to look at it. It'll say what the initial loan payoff was for the seller. And you kind of want to look at that and just say, okay, so that loan was so let's say on this house, we're purchasing for $500,000. Let's say there's a loan for $600,000 on it. And it was just it was just recorded like 6 months ago, right?
Yeah.
It's
Read that.
likely more than what the purchase price is. So how's the seller paying it off? You wanna know
Right,
that,
right. They're also gonna have they're gonna search for any divorce decrees,
Yeah.
child support, tax liens.
On both the buyer and seller.
Yeah, so, and so if you have a seller or a buyer with a very common name, you wanna make sure, because sometimes they could pull something and it might not be your person,
Mhm.
right? I've seen that happen
Yeah.
before.
Well,
And
it's-
I've seen when we actually had child support and the guy couldn't buy a house because he hadn't paid child support, and they had to get
Mhm.
a letter from the
Mhm.
ex-spouse or.
but if the seller does owe a bunch of child support or something like that, there has to be some sort of settlement made
Yeah,
to
and
close the
title will
deal.
want that.
If it's more than what is on,
Mhm.
than what the funds are available, so.
Yeah.
So pay attention to this, and the big one though, I think it's like CC&Rs, HOA. It's like CC&Rs, you wanna make sure that your client can use the property,
In the way they
that
intend.
they're reading them, so they know how to use the property within the bounds. So there's some that won't, there's like Claremont is a retirement community in Bethany. It's on a golf course. You can't park your car in the driveway for more than like 24 hours. Otherwise it's in the garage, right?
Oh my
It's a big one.
gosh,
Or some,
that's huge.
my neighborhood, you can't have your RV parked in your driveway for more than 24 hours. So if they're planning on parking their camper in front of their house,
For
no
a
can
couple
do.
days or forever or whatever. Another one too, what if your client's anticipating having a home business? And I have seen some where they
Mhm.
don't allow a small business being run out of the homes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's where UPS is picking up stuff, that's still a small business running out of the
Could
homes.
be, yeah.
I
Could
had
be
to go
an issue.
and help knock on doors to get my client approval in a neighborhood to be able to do that.
I think in this day and age, those deliveries are mitigated because everybody's buying things from Amazon.
Right.
Right, so it may be hard to distinguish who's running a home business or not,
Yeah,
but letter of the law.
right?
This is a big one. This is the date that you are going to, the minute you go into contract, you're going to put this date in your phone and make sure you never miss this date, never, ever miss this date. So this is the inspection contingency, the inspection period, and this allows, go ahead.
When does it start?
It starts the first business day following acceptance of the offer. So if the offer is accepted on Saturday, the first business day, barring a holiday, would be Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
What
And
if it's Friday? Saturday considered a business day?
it is not. And if it's, let's say you go into, let's say they accept the offer on Monday, Tuesday is the first business day.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So it's the next business day.
Holiday, skip it.
Holiday, skip it. All right. Okay, so in this, it says that you're going to have, and we're gonna just pretend that we're using this 10 business days right here. So the buyer shall have 10 business days to inspect the property. I'm not gonna go into, I'm not gonna read the whole thing out. To inspect the property and negotiate repairs within 10 business days, okay? So you're gonna list the inspections you're gonna do right here. The general inspection is not needed to be listed here because you already had the permission to do that. But like if you wanted to do a sewer scope, you'd have to say sewer scope. If you wanted to do radon testing, you'd have to say radon testing. If you wanted to have a stucco guy come out and check the stucco, you'd say, stucco removal, stucco inspection and possible removal of samples. If
Yeah.
you're doing a tank search, you have to do that. If you're gonna pull soil, you wanna make sure you put that in there. So you need to have permission to do these inspections. If you don't have permission to do them, and let they found something that could be detrimental to the property, then you could be liable for the cleanup or the fix of that, because you didn't have permission to find it. Let's say you find oil in the soil, that gets reported to DMV, and now the DEQ, thank you.
Yeah.
Gets reported to DEQ, and now DEQ flags that property for cleanup, and you didn't have permission to pull that sample. That's your problem. Now you've done something you weren't allowed to do. You could be the one who has to pay to clean up all that soil. So that can be expensive.
Yeah, and there's another form that you can use that will have a list of all these things. You don't have to freak out and worry, am I gonna remember all those? So there's another form where you can choose
Choose the ones you want to use.
this one, and then you can go to that form and check all the boxes that you want.
So this inspection period, the inspection contingency, it ends at 5 PM on the 10th business day, because that's what we were gonna fill in there. On the last business day of the inspection period, it ends at 5 PM, right? So if it's the last day of the inspection period, you sent over a repair addendum, but you don't have a response yet, your client's either gonna have to terminate the sale, they're gonna have to get the seller to agree to extend the inspection period. But if it becomes 501 and neither of those two things have happened, then they've agreed to purchase the property in as-is condition.
Yeah.
All right. So your client can ask for any repair they want, right? The seller can say, no, I'm not going to do that repair. The seller can't say, no, I'm not going to sell you the house. So keep that in mind. Usually you find some sort of middle ground, you get some sort of inspections done, or you get a credit for repairs instead. So instead of doing the repair, the seller may say, well, we'll give you $3,000 instead of that at closing to do it.
Yep.
Which is, I think, a much better way to do it.
Yeah, because having to deal with construction and doing everything, making sure it's done on time. And as a buyer, the seller is gonna go the cheapest route possible to get it done. And then for a buyer's gonna want better quality, right? So sometimes it's, okay, do you want to take this on and get better quality, construction or whatever it is that's done, or are you okay with whatever the seller does?
Yeah. I really believe in giving credits and for both sides. I just think it gives the buyer control over the repair, and it's better for the seller. Even the seller has to pay a little bit more than they would have otherwise. They're not going to take on the responsibility of having to have that work done. And in this market, the way we are right now, you couldn't probably get it done in time. Like, it's really hard to get repairs done before closing right now. It's just like, if you have to get a new roof done, roofs are 2 months out. So getting someone to re-roof a house before closing is next to impossible.
Yeah.
Is that the time frame you have for inspections? So when you have the repair done, it doesn't have to fall on the 10-day period. It just has to happen.
It's on your the repair addendum.
The time frame for the repair. Yeah, it's stipulated in that agreement. In the repair addendum, there's a spot where it's stipulated. People put timelines on it. I saw one the other day that said, seller shall make this repair immediately. And then down below, it said, done like 3 days before closing.
Yeah.
I was like, well, which
Okay,
is it?
yeah.
Is it done immediately or is it done 3 days before closing? So
Yeah.
probably the latter.
And usually you want to give them as much time as possible, give yourself time to go back and inspect it to make sure it's done right.
Exactly. What I like to do, I like to have that expire, and it's on a separate addendum. It also calls for a specific addendum being used in here. So if you're going to make a repair request, you're going to use OREF.
I'm gonna go grab it, or
No,
at least
just-
pull it up.
No.
Isn't it down?
No.
No. Does it call it
Have
out
they changed
here? Copy of reports and portions. They took it out.
We're gonna go back down and see some of the previous paragraph. Huh, that's interesting. That's a change. They didn't notify us. Well, anyways, it used to say use the buyer's repair addendum. I would always use the buyer's repair addendum because I like, it has a lot of the wording that you already need to make sure that the repairs are being done in a workmanlike fashion, and it has expiration, it has a date in which the repair should be done by. I would always use that buyer's repair addendum. I didn't used to like it. And as a listing agent, I didn't always like it. You may get a regular addendum back now as opposed to seller's repair addendum.
Yeah, they changed those addendums. It was different before too, remember?
Yeah. So,
Seller's response to the repair addendum doesn't exist anymore.
One other question.
Yeah.
With like, if you don't put any invasives, say you're buying like a new house and there's no invasives listed, but your general inspection, the guy goes through and maybe sees like something like mold. What do you do in that sense?
You need to get permission. You need to get permission, at least in the email, to do the mold. I would want an addendum that says, you know, seller authorizes buyer to sample mold in attic.
Just get one addendum over to him as soon as possible and have
Sure. Get it signed.
Yeah.
A lot. Also, some of the companies that you would be working with, like if you want to get a soil sample or something, they're going to require, a lot of the reputable companies require the seller to sign off on it. I don't think you want to rely on that because what if they forget and they do it anyways? But that, if you did have that document signed, that should suffice as well.
Okay.
LeadBased paint, well, it's not used very often. We won't get into this too much, but there's a separate LeadBased paint addendum You must use it if the property was built before 1978. It's required by federal law. It's enforced by the EPA, which are the feds. They have the same power as the FBI. Don't mess with the feds. Always deliver the lead-based paint addendum along with the Protect Your Family from Lead-Based Paint EPA pamphlet. Make sure they get sent together and have them completed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Private well. So the property's on a well. You would check the box here, and then you would have to use this addendum in concert with this agreement. If you don't, send it over. If it's not executed along with this offer, you have a voidable offer. Same with the septic agreement. Same thing here. If it does, you have to use the septic addendum. If it's not executed along with this offer, then you have a voidable offer in your hands. Seller's property disclosure statement. This is new here. I'll read it really quickly. Under the form, this was here before, they changed the wording a little bit. Under Oregon law, buyer has a right to revoke buyer's offer unless this transaction is exempt or buyer has waived the revocation right. Buyer may exercise the revocation right only in writing and only within 5 business days after the sale has been signed and accepted by both buyer and seller has delivered the buyer or buyer's agent a complete seller's property disclosure statement. However, a buyer may exercise the revocation period at any time before receiving the seller's property disclosure statement, so long as buyer does so before closing. And this is where I think they're wrong. This provision supersedes any contrary terms to the seller's property disclosure statement. I don't think that's lawful. There's an explanation to it I don't buy. This pretty much states what's in the seller's property disclosure statement. This pretty much works. So I don't know that it really does violate anything in there. This word exempt is not exclude or is different. So this says exempt. In the seller's property disclosure statement, there's an exclusion. There are 2 different words. I think they mean 2 different things in this situation. But make sure when you receive this from the seller that there's a question answer. There's a box check for every single question asked. And that there's a star yes answer given on any document, that there's an explanation on a separate form signed by the seller as to why they said yes.
Yep.
And then that's all you need to worry about. But once that has been sent to you completely, that 5-day right of revocation period begins for your client. Until it's been given, it does not begin. So they have that right to revoke even before.
So if the seller, or the listing agent put the seller's disclosures in the MLS and I shared that with my buyers, does that count?
I think if you shared it with your buyer's accounts, but if you don't share it with your buyers, it does not. So
Okay.
if just because it's sitting there in the RMLS doesn't mean that they delivered it to you. But if you deliver that to your buyer, I think
Now it
now it counts. Now they're on the clock. Because now they
But we
have it.
could look at it and go, I don't see anything that's really, or there's a major thing we need to worry about,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. So have them review it, have them ask questions about it. But you should look for, and when I'm looking at it, when I'm reviewing it, I'm just making sure they've given all the answers. Okay. All right.
We've got like 10 minutes, 8
Yeah.
minutes.
Public water, it's just.
That's normal.
The only thing big on this one, this section here is number 4. All electrical wiring, heating, yada, 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 yada. And the balance of the property, including the yard, will be in substantially their present condition at the time buyers entitled possession. So the house that they bought, they're going to get. They're not gonna, if it burns down, they're not buying it, right? That number 4 is really important. It says the house is going to be the way it is.
So what if we show up on closing day and you left garbage everywhere in the house?
If they didn't say they were going to leave the garbage, if you didn't say in the personal property section that all the garbage in the house was included in the sale, then they should have it removed.
Thank you. Just like how I just throw in little things at them.
Sounds like you've dealt with it before.
Oh, I've dealt with lots of stuff
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go quickly.
Yeah, let's keep going. This is all- This is a big one. 17 homeowners association. If there is an HOA, you're gonna check the box yes, and then you're going to use the HOA addendum, and you're gonna review all those documents with your client and make sure they get all the documents listed. You wanna make sure they get all the documents listed on that form, especially the meeting minutes and
Yep.
any financial information.
Yep.
Okay.
The reserve study.
Reserve. We have a buyer right now that, it turns out the HOA was not $417 a month, it was $950 a month.
Whoa,
Was not disclosed, and it's for
Whoa.
20 years.
whoa.
And the seller sent over the HOA documents. They created a Google Drive for the HOA documents,
Yeah.
but they just put the CC&Rs and bylaws, and they omitted all the other ones and sent them over to us. Straight up fraud.
Whoa.
It's gonna be a big deal. It's gonna be a huge deal.
Huge deal.
Huge deal. I think that agent's
That
gonna,
makes a difference and the buyer can't buy it.
I think that it closed.
Oh, it did.
Nobody caught it. The lender didn't catch it, nobody caught it.
Oh.
So I think our buyer is probably gonna get a check from that listing.
Oh,
agent
yeah, they
for
are.
about $100,000.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
If he's smart.
And then they'll put it away.
Otherwise, we could take his, we could
Oh,
take it, we could probably, he could,
and guess who you have to help you with stuff like that? Kelly.
I do a lot of research.
That's why I make him do this.
Alarm system, always check unknown. Smart home features, always check unknown, just because I don't know. But just
Unless
looking at
it
how,
states that there are
Yeah.
some.
even then I might say it. I just don't even know. It's just, I don't think there's a lot of, there's no bad reason to say I know. There's no good reason to say I know, right?
Well, the good reason to say yes is because then they have to provide that list to you.
Right, yeah. They're supposed to, it's the most
Mhm.
overlooked part of this agreement. No one ever does it.
I,
But, do you do it?
I did it.
You're good, good job. But yeah, I always check unknown just because it's hard to tell from visiting the home in a half an hour when it's all there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, wood burning stove, this has to do with the Clean Air Act.
Yeah,
I-
most of them probably gone.
Yeah, most of them are not.
Home warranties, don't put that on there. Have your buyer buy one later if they want it.
Mhm, mhm. We're gonna name the escrow company here. If it's a really competitive situation, you probably want to use the escrow company that's disclosed on the listing.
It's down here,
This is who,
right here in the financial section.
so this is who the seller or the seller's agent would prefer to work with. Let's have a marketable offer and give them what they want in a competitive situation. If it's not that competitive, then I want to use my person. I want to have the home court advantage. I want to use my person who's going to call me first, who's going to be looking out for me. My escrow officer would have caught that HOA issue. She would have caught the
Oh,
difference in
yeah.
price. She would have gotten on the phone with me immediately and said, "Hey, Kelly, oh my gosh, did you know the HOAs are actually $500 more than you thought they were?" We would have caught it. The
Yeah.
escrow officer for the seller, they didn't catch it, or they didn't care to catch
Or
it.
they didn't pay attention to catch it.
Right, Yeah.
Whoa,
it's a big deal.
huge.
Closing date, so usually I do my prorations as of the closing date, but every once in a while I might put it as the possession date, but usually the closing date.
If
Earnest
you're
money-
gonna 60 days out because we want to give the seller extra time to get to win the deal.
It
why-
depends on how
Yeah,
like if you're charging for the rent back, and a lot of times people charge what they call PITI,
mhm.
which doesn't mean anything. I prefer it says spelled out, but it means principal, interest, taxes, insurance. So that's the basis of the buyer's payment is a PITI.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of times on the occupancy agreement, they'll say a buyer will say seller to pay 1/30 of buyer's PITI per day
Mhm.
for staying in the property. Again, I like to see principal,
Oh,
interest, taxes, insurance.
I do it that way, but then I say, but in the amount of, and
Yeah.
actually get it from the lender and.
If you know it, sometimes you don't know it.
Oh, I do.
Fair
A good lender will, how
Yeah,
about
that's
that?
true.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do that, and you're also gonna do prorates as of the possession date, you're kind of like double taxing the buyer on that.
If you're
So I wouldn't
gonna,
do
if you're gonna do free rent for 60 days,
that.
then I
Then
would
maybe you
do
would wanna
this.
do, maybe you would wanna do that then. But again, in a competitive offer situation, you're probably always checking that box.
Oh, they'll miss something.
They might miss it, yeah. Depends on who it's, do it to the Clark group and they're gonna catch
Oh,
it. and they're gonna
Alex
throw you off
will,
track.
yeah.
So don't underestimate people. So the date you put here, this is really important. You want to make sure that your client is able to deposit earnest money per this date here, right? We're going to deposit with escrow. If it's not deposited with escrow on the date they say they breached the contract, and the seller could come after them for the earnest money. So what I always would say is if it doesn't get deposited by this date here, don't deposit it without permission to deposit it.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Because it's harder for them to get, if a seller's gonna have a hard time suing somebody to get money they don't have. But if it's sitting in an escrow account where it won't be released, it's going to be causing your buyers a lot more problems. So if I deposit on the 4th business day without permission, the seller could say, oh, wait, you just breached the contract. I want your earnest money. This sale's terminated.
Yep,
And
and then
then-
go get another deal.
And they could go get another deal and your client's earnest money would sit and that $5,000 would sit in an escrow account until everybody agreed what to do with it. So if you go past that date, don't deposit until you get permission to deposit. You better have a good reason why. I always make a big deal about this. I always make sure my buyers know, get this money in, don't miss
ASAP.
it. And
Oh, sorry.
it's okay.
Let me go faster.
So this talks about the earnest money refund to buyer. There's one thing here that is kind of key. I don't love it, but you could fall back on this. Okay, right here. Seller fails to complete this transaction. Okay, no. Any condition which buyer has made an express contingency in this agreement and has not been otherwise waived fails through no fault of buyer, then the buyer could get their earnest money back. I don't like the way that's written. Like if you're creating a contingency, talk to me before you create it because it needs to have several factors to make it enforceable. It needs to have cures should it fail. And I don't think this is a really, it says express contingency, fails through no fault of buyer. I just think it's just a little vague. So if you ever write your own contingency, you start writing the words, this sale is contingent upon, call me to make sure we're doing it the right way. Because those are red flag words. Whenever I see that, I'm always like, I hold my breath that we talk about what happens when the contingency fails. This talks about breaches by this buyer and how the seller would retain the earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
Closing, your close date goes there. Talking about closing disclosure, keep going. Marketable deed, this means that the seller is going to deliver a title in basically your client's name. It's being marketable. Closing the possession, if it's anything but this box right here, then we're going to use an agreement to occupy after closing. If we don't use the agreement to occupy after closing,
This one,
thank you,
that one.
then this is a voidable contract as well. You don't have a meeting of the minds unless this is agreed to in concert with this, so they need to be done at the same time. Otherwise, you could expose yourself to having somebody else come in and buy and purchase the property, I think.
And don't forget, if there's a tenant, you check one of these boxes.
Absolutely. Thank you. This might be the most important part.
Oh, for
This
sure.
could be a really big deal. So if there's a tenant in the property, I know you guys probably paying attention to landlord-tenant law. It's very difficult to evict a tenant.
Especially in Multnomah County.
Especially in Multnomah County. So if there's a tenant in the property, ideally they would be gone by the time your client took possession of the property, moved into the property before they closed on the property. The problem is you get yourself in a multiple offer situation. It kind of could get in a situation where your client might have to accept the tenant and they don't want to. So
Yeah.
if they're buying a duplex or something like that, that'd be a case where they may have to accept the tenant.
Mhm.
And then we go through a bunch of definitions and instructions. We don't need to get into that, although I beg you to read this stuff.
Yeah, you should read the whole entire purchase and sales agreement so that you know it word for word. If your buyer comes and asks you a question or a seller asks a question about the contract that you have, that you're presenting them, you want to know what it is, right?
Off the
And you don't
top of
have to
your
be like Kelly, where you could say, go back to 5.1 and that's where you have.
Yeah, you may not need to know it in that much detail, but I challenge you to. I mean, it really is useful. Yep. Oh, go back down up to levy of property taxes. Usually we're going to check this one. The property is not specially assessed for property taxes. So if it were like a historic property or if it was a rural property or it's forested or something like that, there may be a different tax. There might be a tax deferment that the seller has to avoid, or if they're elderly, they can defer their property taxes until closing. You want to make sure you check the correct box there. We're a little bit late, sorry, everybody.
No, Josh, he said he's going to be hopping on Zoom. And he's not on yet. So we're okay.
Okay. So here, this is the name of your clients. This is how they want to take title of the property. If they're taking title of a trust, or if it's a company that's purchasing it, they would be listed right here. Otherwise, it's just your client's names as they like it to appear on the title. This is the date that the offer expires. I think you should give at least 24 hours probably for your offer to expire, unless it's like a deadline and you know when they're going to respond. It's been dictated into RMLS. You know what the expiration, when they're going to be making a decision by. Then you put the expiration date in here.
Don't forget to give yourself time to get your buyers to sign
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're giving them 20, if you're writing this, it's 5 o'clock, I'm going to give them till 5 o'clock tomorrow, but you're going to send it over to your buyers and they're not going to be able to sign it until 7. You still got to get it back. You got to prep your email to send out to the agent. Now it's way less than 24 hours.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a dance where you want to give them enough time to respond,
But not too much.
but not too much. And I've been, most of my career, I've been a listing agent, and I've never really paid too close of attention to your expiration date, because we're going to respond based upon my timeline or my client's timeline, because it's been mostly a seller's market. But if it was a buyer's market, that could change.
The other thing too is really pay attention, to the listing in RMLS and talk to the agent, because you want to also know, like, how much time do you need for this? What if their sellers are in another country, right? And it's going to take time to get to them because of the time change, and then to be able to get back, or if they're unavailable or flying that day, right?
Yeah. If you give too much time here, you might give the seller too much time to respond. Like if you write the offer today and you give them until next week to respond, just because.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? I don't know. But it gives the seller a lot of freedom to goof around. The flip side of that coin is you make it too short, you're probably creating more paperwork for yourself, because if they don't respond in time, then you're probably going to have to do an addendum extending that. And that's kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Any questions? Oh, this section right here, everybody, this is for the seller to fill out. You don't need to fill this out. This is for the seller's agent to fill out.
Yeah. The date, time they sent it over. What happens if you get this back and that's not filled out?
You should send it back, but I don't make that. Actually, don't make that.
You don't?
I don't care. I think
I always send it back next time.
I think this is the dumbest part of the whole agreement. Like, there's a paper trail on all this stuff. I just feel like this is not super necessary. So I don't enforce this really hard. Maybe one day the ORF will come in here. I mean, the Oregon real estate agent will come in here and they'll write us all up about it. But for me, this isn't a big deal. All right. Anybody have questions before we?
I'm gonna find out where Josh is. Josh, you're late.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Josh. Oh, he's been asking me for the ID. Hang on.
Cool.
Austin.
Try.
I'm gonna stop share. I don't know if he's still.
Good job, Tanya. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody have access to the ID real quick? Let me see.
Very similar to that. Again, I just think it's the more time you do it, so get a copy of that.
Yes.
It's super important.
Okay, I'll just tell him, go to kwpagents.com. I don't know.
Small.
Is it on here? Can I share? Austin, are you in there?
Just try to get through it. I think it's really important.
No, I can't share.
Like my first time taking the class, and I'm like very practice at this. I go through it really like.
Once you start using it, it's a little bit more to understand it. It's a little easier to like.
Yeah, right now it's abstract.
Right now, it's just a bunch of words. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Brian, you hanging on for the class? See, I don't answer my phone while I'm on in these classes, and Josh has been sitting there going, "What's the link?"
Do not disturb. So.
Apparently, sometimes I do need to look at my phone. Poor guy, he's probably like, hello. Austin, are you in there? No. No.
There he is.
Yay, there he is. Sorry, Josh. You're muted.
Here I am.
Sorry, we were teaching and I put my phone away, like a good person.
Nice.
And it's Austin's code. I don't know what it is. I just go to the link every time I go to my calendar and link it. Okay, I didn't get a chance to talk to you, so I'm going to do this real quick before I forget. I just want you to follow up and tell me what date works for you. But I found that I think we should have a class on what happens if my buyer wants to buy a property that has 50 acres,
Okay.
right? Different loan,
Okay.
right? So you just let me know when you can do that. I want to talk about the different loan types, program that you guys might have, or what they need to be aware of if they have someone that comes, the difference of it being a farm or not a farm, it's just acreage, right?
Sure.
Cool.
Sure. How about the either the 21st or the 4th? I can't do the 28th. So
Let's do the 21st.
okay.
Okay. I'll send you a text so that we both have it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and you should be able to share your screen. 21st October. How do we want to label it?
October. I don't know. Rural and unique properties.
Okay, let's do that. Cool. All right, now we're gonna talk about jumbo loans though.
All right, let's do it. 6 months.
Brian, small groups, we're going into working with your sphere. Utilizing all the other stuff that we've been doing.
All right. So we'll be going over in small groups. Okay. All right. So jumbo loans, let me share my screen here, see if I can figure out how to do that. Slideshow. Yeah. Share screen. Share.
Know where everybody is. Come on.
All right, can you see that?
Yeah, Austin, how do I get it over into the room here? Wait, view options, exit full screen. Never mind, I got it. View options.
All right. All right, you guys can see that?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. So what is a jumbo loan?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Have we cut the, do you want me to stop it real quick so we can at least get a separate recording?
Yes.